You got to admire the security of knowing that no matter what idiotic thing you say, the media will defend you. I mean, how secure do you have to be to put out stupid ideas like this and know that the media are going to continue to call you a Democratic fresh face filled with great ideas for the future of the country? Putting out ideas like this and knowing full scale that the blowback is only going to come from conservatives and from people in media who don't happen to be motivated leftists, which is like 5 people. It's got to be great. I mean, that's got to be just a charmed life, doesn't it? And those of us in the conservative commentariat, we spend every waking minute thinking about where the next attack is going to come from the media, because this is what they do on a routine basis. Every conservative politician thinks this way too. If you're a Democrat, basically life is a musical. You're walking around, people are dancing in the background, usually they're Washington Post reporters. Every so often, Tom Hanks pops out of the woodwork to give you an endorsement. It must just be fabulous. Here's the thing about being on the left. There is no Overton window for the left. There is no idea that is too wild for the left to actually wrap its arms around and embrace, if only for a moment, to have a one-night stand with. The left will embrace any crazy idea. So on the right, the Overton window is really small, and the left helps shrink the Overton window so that if you say things like Western civilization is superior to other civilizations, this may be outside the Overton window. But if, like Farhad Manjoo, an opinion columnist at the New York Times, you write a column called Abolish Billionaires, then that's inside the Overton window. No problem at all. This article says, some ideas about how to make the world better require careful, nuanced thinking about how to best balance competing interests, he began. Others don't. Billionaires are bad. We should presumptively get rid of billionaires. All of them. You know who had this idea? Stalin. You can liquidate them and take their wealth. That would be one way of getting rid of billionaires, but that's not what they're talking about. What they are talking about is kneecapping the wealthiest among us. This is the language in the New York Times. $1 billion is wildly more than anyone needs, even accounting for life's most excessive lavishes. It's far more than anyone might reasonably claim to deserve, however much he believes he has contributed to society. Again, you don't seize wealth for yourself, you idiots. You don't become a billionaire by saying, you know what, today, got up in the morning, decided I'm going to be a billionaire. And then you just go out and you steal people's wallets until you're a billionaire. That's not how being a billionaire works. Unless you're a socialist, in which case you could do that, right? I mean, if you're like Hugo Chavez, you can make yourself a billionaire just by seizing everybody else's wealth. So I guess for socialists who believe that all economics is a zero-sum game, the only way to become a billionaire is by exploiting other people. But for those of us who live in a free market world of free exchange and mutual labor exchanges, you become a billionaire by engaging in lots of voluntary transactions with people who want the thing you are providing. But apparently this is immoral. That's immoral. Now, what makes transaction 1 different morally from transaction 1 million morally? What is the moral difference between Burger King selling its first hamburger and Burger King selling its 1 millionth hamburger? The answer is nothing. It's the exact same transaction. There is no moral difference. But for the left, with every incremental sale of a burger that makes the people who own Burger King richer, it becomes a less moral act to sell the burger to a willing customer. That's nuts. So here's what Farhad Manjoo, again, the New York Times editorial board, my goodness, what a repository of idiocy. They say, at some level of extreme wealth, money inevitably corrupts. Why don't you tell us which level? Which level makes you corrupt? I've had money. I've had not a lot of money. When did I become corrupt? I know several billionaires, by the way. When did they become corrupt? Some are great. Some are jackasses. Just like every other human being. When does poverty corrupt? Because I've heard it both ways. So apparently, if you're too wealthy, then you're corrupt. And if you're too poor, you're corrupt because you're poor. So if you're too wealthy, you're corrupt because at a certain point, that 10 millionth dollar made you corrupt and evil. Unless you're Oprah, in which case you're awesome. Okay, let's accept Oprah from this. Exempt Oprah. But if you're poor, if you don't have enough money, that also makes you commit crimes and mistreat women and knock people up and all this. He says, I cover technology, an industry that belches up a murder of new billionaires annually. Because that's what happens. That's how millionaires and billionaires are created, is that the earth just belches them forth. Like the Uruk-hai from Lord of the Rings. Just sort of the earth opens and Mark Zuckerberg springs out. Now, if that were the case, I too would be horrified. But that is not actually how billionaires are made. He says, much of my career has required a deep anthropological inquiry into billionairedom. But I'm embarrassed to say I had never before considered the idea that if we aimed through public and social policy simply to discourage people from attaining and possessing more than $1 billion in lucre, just about everyone would be better off. In my defense, back in October, abolishing billionaires felt way out there. It sounded radical, impossible, maybe even un-American. But it is an illustration of the political precariousness of billionaires that the idea has since become something like mainline thought on the progressive left. Yes, it does demonstrate that you are all nuts, that you have all lost your freaking minds, that whatever moral fiber you had has been crapped out and flushed away into the sea. My goodness. Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are floating new taxes aimed at the super rich. Representative AOC, who also favors higher taxes on the wealthy, has been making a moral case against the existence of billionaires. No, she hasn't. She just says it's immoral for a society to have billionaires. Also, we're going to need these billionaires to turn over a bunch of their money every year and continue to produce all of that money so that we can pay for all of my garbage programs. Farhad Manjoo says, I suspect the question is getting so much attention because the answer is obvious. Nope, billionaires should not exist. Now, has he even made the case why they shouldn't exist? Or is it just like, I don't like that people have lots of money? So far, I have not heard any case why billionaires should not exist, because you have to make a case that billionaires should not exist while at the same time maintaining that free market exchange that betters everyone who is involved is good. You cannot have those two things at the same time. Either I am in control of my labor and my time and my goods and my services, or I am not. If you suggest that it is good for me to do all of those things up to the point where I make a lot of money, then what you are really saying is that it is not good for me to do all of those things beyond a certain point. The transactions become a net negative beyond a certain point, which closes down productivity, which prevents free exchange, which makes goods and services more expensive. I mean, this is basic. Forget Econ 101. This is basic morality and basic human logic. But those have gone out the window a long time ago. He says billionaire abolishment could take many forms. It could mean preventing people from keeping more than $1 billion in booty, but more likely it would mean higher marginal taxes on income, wealth, and estates for billionaires and people on the way to becoming billionaires. Those policies ideas turn out to pull very well, even if they're probably not actually redistributive enough to turn billionaires into sub-billionaires. Well, shock. When you poll idiots about whether to take other people's money, everybody's like, yeah, and most people are kind of idiots. It's actually just across the aisle. Everybody's stupid, and if you poll me on should we take my business partner's money, I happen to like my business partner, but if I did not, I'd be like, sure. Right? If you poll me on just a base id level, should we take all the money away from like Jane Fonda? Yeah, why not, man? But on a moral level, no, you shouldn't take away Jane Fonda's money, even if she's a disgrace to her fame. More important, says Farhad Manjoo, aiming to abolish billionaires would involve reshaping the structure of the digital economy so that it produces a more equitable ratio of the super rich to the rest of us. Inequality is the defining economic condition of the tech age. We're seeing these effects now. A few superstar corporations, many in tech, account for the bulk of American corporate profits, while most of the share of economic growth since the 70s has gone to a small number of the country's richest people. Also, you get a lot of great stuff. And you, Farhad Manjoo, get to write for a living on a computer provided by somebody else, on a program provided by somebody else, using an internet that is presumably, you're sending your columns in via Google. All of this is idiocy. It's just idiocy. We should definitely take his advice on destroying billionaires, taking away their wealth, and preventing economic growth that has accrued largely to the world's poorest. Now, let's be real about this. In our lifetimes, we have watched the abolition, not of billionaires, but of global extreme poverty. That is a result of free market capitalism.